So, it's 11 a.m. on, what's the date today? August 28th. So, I took the freedom as the co-chair of the land use working group to put an agenda together and which is start the meeting and call to order. So, we have, Rob Almeida in attendance online. Linda Miller is here in person, and Phil Griffith is here in person. So all three members of the subgroup, Public Works subgroup, are here. I would like to, in the beginning, just make sure is the process for the subgroups is typically subgroups organize a little bit themselves how they want to structure them. You don't need to have an official chair. You just need to have someone who takes kind of the lead in running through the meeting with the agendas. You can do your kind of unofficial chair of the subgroup if you want, or official chair of the subgroup. It depends on how you want to do it. The most important part, you have to name someone who's making the minutes afterwards. Yeah, we run to a little bit in trouble then with another working group, that some of the subgroups on the Warner's Pond task force were just not disciplined in writing minutes, and that led to a little chaos. So I think Shannon, you are helping in finding stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll send you all the AI summary from Zoom that you can use as a base for your meeting minutes. And then we also just have like a Word document template for you to throw those on. And then once they're approved at a meeting, just send them over to me and I'll post them to the clerk's office.
Yeah. So
a whole new adventure, AI summarize Zoom for me, but
pretty amazing.
you would doubt it.
Yes, it's amazing, but sometimes you have to check.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Don't make up crazy names and stuff.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, my name is pronounced Zorkford.
Now knows that. My name always turns out bad. It's terrible. So for the current meeting, someone of you volunteering to lead through it?
Sure, I'll
Yeah.
do it.
And
Done it before.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, I can, if you want, as the person leading through it, should I talk a bit about the general charge of the subcommittee? So when we set this up on the larger workforce, it is really, we have three subgroups that focus on very distinctive areas. One is public works and the needs and what the options might be that need to be implemented, and that ranges from the water treatment facility needs to where this campus might end or not end, and what are the municipal needs around public works alone. Then we have another subgroup that only looks at fire and police needs here in the main station and West Concord. What are the needs? What are the options? How can they be structured? And then we have a third subgroup which looks into consolidation. Right now, the town is in 18 different buildings across town. The buildings are all in all kind of different shapes. If you want to keep 18 buildings, it will cost a lot of money to bring these buildings up to shape. You have inefficiency. So is there a way to consolidate parts or significant parts of it in one, freeing up land that might be in play actually then for other things like public works or for fire and police, or might be available for development and selling off or whatever. So that's the consolidation group. Across that, we will have kind of similar data needs. So the same questions pop up across the different groups. That's why typically Judith, who is my co-chair, and I try to be like observers to the group. that we are there and trying to, in the background, work across these different groups to understand what kind of common information needs are needed, what kind of data is there, making sure that we can provide the same data to the same groups and not that every group is kind of reinventing the wheel over and over again. He's here also volunteered to help on that on a cross-functional side, to just make sure that if you have a data need, we are finding a way to fill that in. Also in that is often then potential communication needs or information flow need between the groups that say, again, that's not a scenario that is on the table right now, but just thinking about it, if the municipal consultation group would free up Harvey Wheeler, could that be police station? And that would affect the police and fire working group. So we have to have kind of some information flow that goes across. So that's why typically Judith and myself try to listen in, be there as observer, but not really actively being involved, but we are there to provide information of the broader picture of the land use working group to make sure that not everyone is reinventing the wheel. So on this with Public Works, Alan and his team is always fully available for you to get information you need, to think about options. I think we all know Alan for a while. He can be critical of his ideas. You can be creative. And we have some big fishes to fry there, and a lot around the water treatment facility at MCI. That will be a topic. And then, of course, is this campus, options of this, what can be done here, and how we find a solution which is for the greater picture of the town. It's, if we can increase capacity for the sewer, it helps the town in totality, for example. But we have to look at synergies. We have to look at the cost. We have to see what, in the end, this means. The town has a significant debt service level, and we have to look at 10 to 20 years horizons. And not every wish that Alan has, or the police chief has, or the fire chief has, will be possible. I think that is clear. Everyone has to give something somewhere, and we have to find a way to slot this in. So that's more or less the larger picture. The working group itself is at the moment still in bringing all the information together. Overall, we provided, there's a web page, there's a shared drive. You should have a link to that shared drive. The shared drive has a lot of data already there. I know you have to catch up a lot on this. So take some time and screen through what is there, which might help you. Some stuff is not relevant for Public Works, but it helps you then for the broader group discussion. And for you, it's mainly to get you started as a working group. Other working groups already had 2 meetings, so this is your first. So you have to get your process running and thinking about what do you need, what are next steps in the end, and where does it go from here.
So, do you want to talk timeline, just to put some perspective of?
Well,
What you think?
so we want to bring recommendations of the 3 subgroups together in somewhere like end November, beginning of December timeframe to get these things kind of mapped out. Again, these don't need to be final recommendations. And these can be kind of scenario 1, 2, 3, pros and cons, rough estimates, what the financial impacts are, so that we can compare what are the different puzzle pieces. So we have to build these puzzle pieces in scenarios and then see how all of this starts to interlink and what the timelines thereafter are. We get pressure a lot given the budget cycle of the town. Ideally, they want to have numbers ASAP. So far, we communicated back that is unrealistic. We should bring numbers that are based on like certain assumptions and certain information, and not just throwing it out of the drawer just to have numbers. yeah. So the guidance so far back to finance, the question from finance committee, was more. The finance committee needs to put some 10+ year placeholders in their capital plan, no matter what. And then we will see out of this working group where this will be, but, we all know it for years that there's a need for a fire station, police station, that there needs to be some reconfiguring of this campus, either putting money into this or moving it somewhere. So they certain needs are there, so they need to work with placeholders for the current budget cycle.
Can I ask a question
Yeah.
like that? I'm fairly new to Concord. I've only been here 3 or 4 years. And there's an assumption I remember this from we had a conversation with the
Yeah.
earlier work groups. There's an assumption that we need a new police station, we need a new fire station, we need to reconvene all these
Yeah.
places. How is that question being sort of managed to the more general public and voters who may not be aware of that?
Yeah.
And coming up with that finance committee or the board of selectmen, hey, this group of people just suddenly decided we need $30 million to build all these new things, may come as quite a surprise. I until this land use committee was put together, I have only been here a few years, but I had no idea that there was a need for a new public works campus, or a need for a new police station, new, and town buildings. I find the people I want in town buildings. So I
Yeah.
think there's a whole bunch of marketing, external PR work to be done for any of this to have
Yes.
any value.
Yeah, that is,
How are we dealing with
so
that?
that will be, on the land use working group level itself.
Okay.
So not on the subgroup that looks at, let's say in this case, and public works. So your job is to question, do we need to spend money in the first place? Yeah, what can we do? Can we use this campus? What's the cost or not cost for that? What does it mean with a scenario that is different, or what does it mean over there? So different scenarios. And then I think not the next land use working group, but the working group meeting thereafter, we will have on the agenda discussion around, okay, how do we start communicating findings or the work of the land use group as such to start ramping up communications. I think it's dangerous to communicate potential solutions too early when there is not the homework actually done. Yeah, I know a lot of people run around with ideas, and it's good to have ideas. I call them all scenarios. Until we have the data and the information that confirms or neglects or just shows the full picture of a scenario, we should be very careful to say, town, this is the scenario we are going after. Yeah, because we have to have at least some data-based vetting on the scenarios before we start. We can start, and that's most likely the path I can imagine, but we as a group, whole group need to discuss, to start, demonstrate and communicate that we are existing, communicate generally is what is the general scope of what we are doing, preparing the community for this is actually what we are looking at. And then when we get more scenarios, you might have to do a public forum on other things and letters to the bridge or other communications where we then start saying, okay, these are the things that are on the plate. Yeah, and start to communicate that. I hate to communicate scenarios too early.
I have a question, and that is, it seems to me that unlike public safety or municipal operations, there's a unique issue and degree of complexity for public works,
Mhm.
and that is that the financial structure is different because they're ratepayers.
For parts of it. Parts of it.
Parts of it.
For water, sewer,
Now it's solid waste recycling.
solid waste recycling, garbage, yeah, that was garbage, what's the third, and
Stormwater.
stormwater. But the roads is the taxpayer. So highway and grounds.
So I feel like it would be, I feel like it's a question when we just come up with numbers for buildings.
Yes.
That isn't the whole story, and I don't know, do we need to have an understanding of who's gonna be paying and how they're gonna be paying. Again, to make that communication
Yes,
more transparent to the taxpayers and those who receive the services.
yeah, I think that is very important.
And so
Yeah.
can we, I mean, how should we as a subcommittee approach that? And should we have some kind of teach-in of what the finances are, or should we dig into that on our own, or should we have like a separate subcommittee that?
No, I think you have to, when you
Okay,
go in
But,
and I think it will naturally evolve around the topics. So let's take the water treatment facility as such as a thing. This can be very well defined on the cost base and say, okay, this is the cost for the wastewater treatment facility, yeah? So that would fall under the respective enterprise fund. I think we have an issue in Concord in the general community that people don't understand. What is the general fund and what are enterprise funds? But also, I think there is a point to be taken from the community that yes, okay, at the moment they understand it's the enterprise fund, well, it's still getting paid by the citizens by the rates. Yeah,
no, by the users, not by the citizens.
here by the users, yeah. But this via the rates, yeah.
Yeah,
And so there's still a cost impact to at least the users that are also taxpayers. So some feel kind of the total cost of living. This is one discussion the finance committee often has. It was the total cost of services of the town for people living here and residing here. Right now, at this moment, I would say focus on, in this subgroup, focus on public works and in how these different building blocks. When we get cost numbers, we can, I think, quite quickly figure out is this an enterprise fund or is this a general fund building? And then we can keep track of these, but it has to come into the overall picture in the end. And what does it mean for everyone living in Concord, the ones that are users of the sewer or not? Will certain things, and you have answers around that, paid by the new people connecting to the sewer system, and the old, what is it? New versus old thinking. So there are certain scenarios where I think that would be 5 steps from here. But it will be super important to go in there, and then we find a way how we structure this. Are we doing it in a subgroup? Are we doing it in a broader, or do we have to form another cross function that looks at the finances?
Sven, could I offer just perspective from, I'm sort of a committee of one, subcommittee of one on data gathering. And the first question I asked was, how much money do we have? How much money does the town potentially have to fund build the recommendations that the land use working group would make? How much do we have? And so getting an answer to that from the town, what's the capacity for them to for the town itself to take on new debt is a question that's being posed for everything that we're doing and will be of value to each of the subgroups. On the question that comes from this discussion, is there a portion of a capital facility that can reasonably get charged to an enterprise fund? That's gonna be a policy question that comes, I think later, too soon to tell, if you're building, you know, even when it comes time to, for someone to spend a lot of money on a wastewater treatment facility at MCI Concord, that is going to be quite a thing for the town to answer, because since it's an enterprise fund and the sewer users that are paying for sewer costs now, I think that there's a much larger policy issue to be discussed about whether there is in fact at some town commitment. Why should the sewer users who are not at MCI Concord, why should anyone but how are you going to fund it needs to be an important decision. There are a number of policy options, which the town itself will need to, and the select board will need to direct here, but they're, so.
Yeah.
We're looking at that for all of us.
Yeah, and the sewer is a specific critical part because only 30% of the town are in sewer. So if there are finance decisions done for the cost of a new wastewater treatment facility, it's exactly that underlying question. Why should 30% of the population pay?
30% of the population, but
30% of the
what's the geography? 30% of what? I'm just interested.
Yeah.
30% of
The town that is sewer.
the town, but as far as it,
30% of the land area of the town?
no, properties,
30% of property.
Property.
Developed property.
right, which is a mixed use, more, probably a higher percentage of commercial as well, because it's in the downtown areas.
Okay.
But, you know,
And
usually,
expanding the sewer capacity at the expense of those who are only hooked up to the sewer is not.
yeah, it's not fair.
It's not-
And, you know, that's part of the
No.
fairness
You need to have a fair
discussion.
way.
That-
Yeah.
But that's a select board in the end, and I think it's very important. Is in the end, we're building. We're building, again, scenarios, thought, and there are certain points where. We have to look at the select board and we'll need to get guidance from the select board. And it's not us in the end to make the major decisions, it's us in the end to prepare the select board to understand what are the issues, what are the options. And for them then to make a decision, okay, this is how the town can do it. And we have to help them to make the decision, and we are not the decision makers. And there will be situations, and you brought up in other meetings, things before, Keith, is like, where we have to go to the select boards and we need your guidance. We are at this point, we have option A, B, and C. And we need your guidance. Should we focus on A and B or A and C? Yeah.
Yeah, I feel better, solving problems of providing recommendations for facilities. If I knew what the budget was that would be available for facilities, and we don't know. But I hope that we'll get that answer. And food, you know, is it DOA to bring $50 million worth of proposals forward?
Yeah, and I think part of it is important to understand just the context, Phil, where you're relatively new to the town. A study was conducted as a result of a need that was identified probably 10 years ago. Took a few years to actually launch and let's actually do this because we got all these needs that have been identified. So that was a report that was done. And I mentioned to the broader committee, really no one in the senior management group today was around when that report was actually generated. So that was kind of staff driven and supported with a consultant on board to look at all of the municipal properties. And I kind of characterize what the needs are with some potential alternatives of, you know, how they might be satisfied, but not much, primarily needs. And what I want to do is make sure that this subcommittee is at least aware of what that report indicated, you know, because this isn't a preference of existing staff. These are industry, you know, sort of established, you know, functions that are not unique to Concord. So that's why the consultant was brought on board to, you know, identify, because believe me, two different directors of public works could have two completely different ideas. The town should make decisions on personal, you know, individual interests. It's what does the industry really, you know, drive? So, and I just for this group, it's helpful to know just for the support, the folks from Public Works. I'm here as the director of Public Works, who's been, you know, working for town for 30 years. Russ Carlstead is our facility manager, but he actually knows and has been with us for a year. And he has a good sense of all the facilities, but he's part of Public Works. Kent Nichols is here as a consultant because we're going to talk a little bit about some wastewater issues and sort of, you know, we wanted to kind of give you an update on some thoughts. But we're a resource to kind of help, and we're here to help you, help us advance the things that we believe are important. And that's how it'll work. And I think the the counter to what are the costs of doing something also have to be compared to what are the costs of not doing something, because the whole idea of, we're gonna spend money. The question is, how are we gonna spend it? And what are the services that we
Yeah.
get?
So before we go into the newer part of this year, I think one thing I want to highlight that touches to A, the timeline, but also B, that we have the other advisory board in town, the MCI advisory group, and they are well ahead of us. They put a lot of effort into this understanding that MCI complex over there. So, but this whole MCI thing, it's on say somehow on their own timeline. Certain things need to be accelerated on the work we are doing from the land use working group to catch up on all the work they did and understand what is done there. But also making sure that people understand what are potential implications of certain scenarios, specifically from Public Works around the wastewater treatment facility, that this is a identified and communicated to the MCI group, or worked with the MCI group, as soon as possible, because then that train is running over there. And we are happy with Linda being on both groups, so that helps. The one thing is we are not reinventing the wheel what MCI is doing. We have to just communicate to say, this is on the wastewater treatment facility, which is one of the two tracks of the MCI process from TCAM, these are the scenarios that are coming out of the land use working group. Our disadvantage is we started over a year later than you. Yeah. So we are late to the game. So some stuff is now kind of on a fast forward that is specifically related to the work of this subgroup. Okay.
I have one more question. It's not following up on that, but it's on the charge, the purpose. And it says in here that Public Works facility, both the public safety building and the Public Works facility are in failure mode and both require relocation. As identified in the 2020 Concord Municipal Facilities Assessment, renovations and/or expansion of these facilities is not an option.
I would question that. I think,
Yeah, I mean,
I would say for each of the subgroups, and we had a quick discussion on that on the fire and police side, is we should question that.
okay,
Yeah.
all right, I wasn't sure if that was one.
Because it's council, what he said is, okay, what's the cost of doing nothing? The cost of doing nothing is said, okay, assuming you're not relocating on this campus, and what needs to be done to just keep it and make it more safe and make it to the standard.
I would assume one of the scenarios is fix it in place, right?
Yeah, no.
It's gotta be one of the,
I
one of the
would-
scenarios we
Well,
evaluate.
Yeah.
it goes on later to, responsibilities of the working group to sort of modify that statement, but the early statement saying that,
Yeah.
I thought.
I think
would
we should take
clarify.
he should take the freedom to question that, in the whole interest also about what the town can afford in the end. Yeah,
Right, there's also a do nothing scenario, right,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
If you
Always.
can,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we don't think the whole town needed it.
Yeah.
And, no one does, so.
Right, and with do nothing, there's a cost of do nothing, and just identify it.
Need to evaluate it.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, this is.
I had a discussion earlier today with someone else, and where I said is, in the end, everyone needs to give. Yeah, it's not that everyone is getting what they wish for Christmas and Easter and birthday and everything. The town will not be able to do that. So we have to be creative, everyone needs to give, and we need to have to find a way that in the end, this is feasible for the citizens of the town. And yes, in the end, they're voting on town meeting, in the end, they pay the taxes or the fees. Yeah, it doesn't make sense that they suddenly the fees go up ridiculously high because of certain financial decisions. Yeah, and we have to be honest to ourselves and to the rest of the town. Okay.
That's very helpful, thank you. We're both gonna catch up on the work
Yeah.
that gets there, we need to dig into some
And
of the.
the one thing you should be aware is I'm a bit out of pocket the next 4 weeks. I will be in Scotland in the Highlands the next 2 weeks. And then I have to attend and co-organize a funeral in Germany. So, but when I'm in Germany in 2 weeks from now, then it's easier, but calling in and being reachable out of the Western Highlands of Scotland will be a little bit challenging.
Sorry.
Yeah, but you can always reach me. Judith is available, and Judith we have one working group meeting while I'm gone. But the rest should be fine. So with that, I give it to you. I will leave at 12
Yeah.
sharp.
Yeah.
And leave it to the rest of the group just to contribute.
Right, so I think the first, again, I've introduced the team, and again, for our team, just to understand. Where Linda has a lot of planning background experience, finance with town, governance. Is on the advisory board for MCI, so she brings that understanding to the table, which is huge. Phil is policy, regulatory, sort of statewide. Very familiar with some of the more complex issues we deal and talk about when it comes to wastewater permits and things like that, which is really helpful, because that's a key, consideration. And Rob, I don't know, we really haven't had a chance to talk, but with Rob, I offer all three of you, we're here to try and help you, and, feel free to, sort of reach out to me directly if you have kind of specific questions, or you want a better understanding, just, kind of, we want to make sure you have whatever information you need. With that said, Russ, if you can sort of provide a little bit of an overview of the report, which kind of high level of why Public Works has been prioritized, based on work that was done back in 2020 and the 2019, why it's on the radar as far as what we are and why it was flagged as Linda mentioned, kind of more on the critical path.
Yeah, how many, has anybody had a chance to go through the report, the 2020 report and scenario Cs, which is
I
where,
apologize.
Don't assume.
that's why I'm just asking, yeah, so,
Blissfully checked out, but I will.
yeah, how deep I go. I'm just gonna read the summary from the report on the Public Works campus and then the police campus, we'll go from there. So the summary, and this was done in 2020. The new DPW central facility is considered on its current site on Keys Road. In this option, the DPW buildings at 133, 135 Keys Road will be raised and newly constructed DPW building, meeting the needs of its five divisions would be constructed. 141 Keys on the same site is not considered in this option. Now, that was one of their final outcomes. The problem with that outcome for us is there's no room to move vehicles on the site. The way they have set this up, there was no, we have to move vehicles, we have big vehicles, we have noisy vehicles, we have equipment. They didn't take that into consideration for us. And I didn't make any handles, I apologize. When we get the public safety building.
No, we're not.
Oh, no, we just wanna say,
focused on.
All right, so I'm gonna hand this around and you guys, you have a look at it. The problem with this site right now, we're sitting in the middle, we're a finger in a wetland. Flooding is an ongoing concern. The building we're sitting in has a little stream running through a basement, right below us where we are right now. This building is part of the whole campus, so I'm gonna include it in the conversation. This building needs ongoing maintenance on masonry because of the moisture problem. The relationship of this building to the other buildings, and this building will always be here because it's historic, squeezes our site down considerably.
So this building is historic, but none of the other ones.
That's right.
Yeah.
You see on the plan, the arrow is on 141. That's where we're sitting right in here. This is the planning, land use management. This is the Public Works, primarily engineering and highway grounds, parks and tree.
Right.
We have salt storage out here and water sewer operations and admin are in this, this is our campus. And here's Kai's Road, just to kind of orient you, and then this is a pump station. This is the wastewater pump station, just that brick building when you come in. So the campus is, the yellow lines are property lines.
So the town actually owns all these properties here, but that's all wet and it's really off limits to us for expansion. So 141 where we're sitting now encroaches upon our operational area in the site. Also, Alan, if you point to the cistern. So right where that arrow is, there's a 60-foot diameter, 20-foot deep cistern, which used to be the collection point for all the septic,
Sewer.
all the
From the
sewer in
town.
town. Because this building was the original sewer plant and it was a pumping station. And so we'll pump everything else. So currently we have that, which is an issue. It's, it's not an issue today, but it's a concern for us for heavy vehicles driving over 100-year-old some construction element that's 20 feet deep, and we don't know what's in it. 133, the building we're sitting in right now, we're looking at through the windows. That's the engineering highway grounds, is a 2-story office component. Maxed out in space. The garages, most people have walked through the garage area and they've seen the tight confines, the conditions of the building. And not so much from lack of maintenance, but from age. Things are just getting old. And they need to be repaired. Equipment fails faster in these environments. And it's harder for them to keep up, with their daily tasks. One of the big things highway has is the vehicles being parked outside. It's getting hotter and wetter, and it's affecting the vehicles as they sit out in the natural elements, which is a cost implication to the town long term. Rubber stripping, simple things like wiper blades, safety for the drivers, the tires, anything that can be deteriorated in a higher ozone level and that kind of stuff. It's a problem for the vehicles, and they're seeing that over there on the repair side, which is adding to the workload of the 2 mechanics we have on staff.
A lot of our assets, we have considerable amount of investments in our fleet.
And you can sort of see where we have the heavy vehicles parked over here south of the building. Now, winter operations, that whole area is filled up with plow vehicles and salt vehicles with adjacency to the salt barn, which is in the wrong location because this building is filled with salt and it's next to a wetland.
It's in the floodplain.
It's also underscaled to the size, the service we need. So we have to do multiple small buys of salt, which is very expensive throughout the year. And last year we had trouble getting salt for a number of weeks. It was just impossible to get salt. So it's a public safety issue. So that whole operation, and as you can imagine, if you point to the fuel dump,
The fuel,
that's a fuel station for diesel and gasoline for our vehicles and town vehicles. There's 2 fuel locations in town. One is here, one is at CMLP over on Elm Street. This is the one that the fire department and the police department use mostly. And you may even see it today while we're sitting here, but you'll see the fire trucks, they'll pull in and come between these 2 buildings. And they'll loop around.
and actually their route, they have to come in this way, they come around, they loop around. To use these, fuel
Fire
pumps.
trucks, did you say?
Yeah,
Fire trucks and police vehicles, yeah.
And
all
the
vehicles.
storage for that is right here. This is the bulk tank.
That's
The above ground tank. There used to be an underground tank here. Another interesting, challenge is the heavy operations that we have, which, it's a lot of heavy equipment and trucks and whatnot. We also have combination of, the public parking in space. And so it's a conflict where you have general public coming for this building or to get service for, a desk, time in front of highway grounds, water, sewer. Then you have also the fleet kind of moving around. So it's always been a bit of a dance that's not ideal.
Yeah, on the public side, there's not a day goes by that I don't have to direct 1 or 2 people looking to find out where they're going, which is, that shouldn't happen.
And again, which is the historic?
This
building?
building here,
Okay, so
actually-
just the 141.
whether it's historic or not, we
See,
rented
it-
this over at
it is
MCI.
historic,
I don't know if it's registered or not. We'd have to find that out. This is considered historic.
Yeah.
It's, we know that This was the original building on this campus.
Is it in the historic district?
Yes, it's in the historic
Yeah,
district.
yeah, that's the other part too. So the whole front of this, the historic district is like that whole area and the pump houses in it. All this area up to our left here, where we're sitting. So you can see the encroachment of the wetlands, it comes right up inside here. We have a road going right next to it. And in the back of this lot, all our seasonal storage is back there. We're behind where it says vertical, we have soils and materials stored there. And this is all at risk of during heavy weather. You know, to be transported through groundwater or through surface waters off to the wetlands. So something we're always monitoring. It adds to the complexities of the site and what the highway ground staff has to deal with.
And what is the acreage? What is the footprint of this current?
Is it
Space.
9? It's not, I think it's
think it
9, was it
might be
9 and 7 usable or something like that? I can't remember off the top of my
Okay,
head.
About 7 that's usable.
Usable, yeah. Yeah, so you can see, you know, we're 1/4 minimal wetlands, and we're actually in some of the wetlands. Some of the paved areas actually over wetland. Yeah,
Can you show the?
Yeah, let me see if I can, I think it's this one here.
And if you
The,
calculated it in appropriate size,
yeah, so there's the wetland.
can for that,
Using virtually everything you can.
yeah.
Yeah.
and these are the things that we're trying to, you know, there is data, you know, it's all been sort of captured. This is a high level overview. We're just trying to
Yeah.
not give you the details, but
We don't want to drill down too much. We want the flavor to come through. If you go back to the satellite.
So it's a great location, except for all the details.
I know you're a detail person, so you're gonna fix that for us.
Can I ask a question, Joel, again, unfamiliar with that? There are, I assume, other public work camps, other things in other parts of the town.
so I want to go back to, and Sven mentioned this, so yes, so just to put it in perspective. We also we have a number of locations because Public Works is not just our operations area where we have our equipment primarily and staff. We also have other areas that we are responsible for, including, for instance, the compost site over off of Walden Street. That's an active area for use. We're really not looking at that, but it's part of the equation. You know, with the municipal land use group, you can look at all the available land and say, if we had it, you know, this is Mark, you know, I always give Mark Howell credit for telling me this when he first got hired in Concord. Are we here by evolution or design? We're here by evolution. We have 18 different sites. We're at this location. Why are we at this location? Because this was a wastewater pump station. Operationally, when you start having other activities, you brought the other activities nearby, not because it was near a wetland or not, because it didn't matter, it was a wetland back in 1900s.
So it'd be, and then they did the study clearly
Yeah.
at this campus here. It would.
They did it
help-
all of the municipal
Yeah.
properties that had sort of staff and operations. They didn't really cover like the compost site, or for instance, the wastewater treatment plant, which has, it's a fairly large parcel off of Old Bedford. And if I zoom out, you know, for instance, you know, just so you can get a scale, and these are the things we wanna understand.
We're 9.75 acres here, about 7% usable.
Oops,
Yeah, right
you're
in.
too far out.
Yeah.
Right in here. This campus here, this is our wastewater treatment facility, and there's a couple different, again, the yellow lines being the property lines. But this is our actual equipment, process equipment for the wastewater treatment plant. These are former sand beds that have been abandoned. This area, we have a cell tower over here, but this is municipal land. If you go down, this is municipal land as well, in this area. It's presently used for agriculture. It's leased, but it's municipal land.
That could be a place.
These are the things that we need to just have on our radar, and that's what we want to put on the table so that the town can make decisions. And some of these go back to what Sven said. You know, there's gotta be trade-offs, and you know, there's gonna be a certain amount of just what's in the town's long-term best interest. Cause we're about to make some decisions that are gonna have far-reaching implications.
And that was actually, I had a discussion just a few days ago on this, where I told also someone this is a reasonable sized lot.
Mhm.
near to operations already. And the first argument you hear in town, it's Eggland and so on, and it's leased. It comes to the same point. Everyone needs to give. Yeah, if this is a location we identify that we can use, it should be on the table to be evaluated. What the outcome is, we
What
will
about
see.
the sand beds? Are they usable or they're?
Yeah, so we have, and we're gonna talk a little bit about what we did at MCI. Those are potentially could be repurposed for wastewater capacity. We've already done some evaluation, and it's kind of why we started when we started about MCI. We used experience that we've already looked at for the municipal site and translated that, well, what does that look like in this campus as well? With wastewater, and I think we just gave you a high level of this campus. We invite you to come back, walk around, be with, you know, whatever we can do to make you kind of understand. Because what I don't want to do is you hear from Alan Cathcart, we really need this. I'm not going to do that. Part of my problem, and I said this at one of our tours, I adapt to what I'm the last person to say our conditions are bad, but I shouldn't be the metric. It should be, what does the industry really think we should have?
For the sand beds,
Yeah.
I don't wanna
Sure, yeah.
digress too much, but, you have a discharge permit, right?
Correct.
With a limit.
Yes.
Are the sand beds outside of that?
Yes.
Kind of like what we're about to talk about at MCI. So there is a process, and we won't go deep into the weeds of where the town has been looking for, trying to expand our finite capacity with that discharge permit. It's a surface water discharge permit. There are other ways of permitting wastewater. Some of them include groundwater. And so the 40B out in West Concord off Forest Ridge is going to be designed with a packaged treatment plant, groundwater discharge. Most of new capacity is being realized, at least in Massachusetts, through groundwater discharge. I'm not aware of any surface water expansions, if maybe one, not even.
So just in a nutshell, so surface water is regulated by EPA and Massachusetts. And this is our problem is unless we get the surface water permits from the MCI property, it's highly unlikely we can get more surface water permits. That's the EPA. On the groundwater, the EPA is not in game. It's just Massachusetts.
DEP.
So we don't have to care about that. And that's why kind of groundwater sand pits and sand beds are important, because that gives us literally the only other option outside of getting the permit from the MCI facility to increase the capacity on soil.
And when we did,
Why are we not going for more groundwater?
The cost on this one.
it's cost benefit.
Well, there's always
Yeah.
cost, there's
Well,
cost.
yeah,
I
There's an
assume to surface water
intricacy,
too.
Linda, to the way the permits work too, which is in Massachusetts, all groundwater discharges are to what is perceived by the state to be a resource that we don't want to degrade. So the state has made an assumption that the biggest degradation of that groundwater resource is nitrogen, because it's a problem for drinking water.
Mhm.
This plant discharges to surface water where nitrogen is not a factor. In fact, the Concord River discharges to the Merrimack, which has a free outfall to the Atlantic Ocean.
I'm not
So
really
this-
talking specifically about MCI, I'm just talking.
Yeah.
about
This, I'm talking about this plant right here.
This plant.
So the
Sorry.
reason I mention this is because this plant treats for certain components. In this case, it does not treat to remove total nitrogen. But if we were to discharge to the ground, the intricacy of this plant is the groundwater discharge permit would require the removal of nitrogen. The process, the entire basis of the plant never factored in the ability to remove nitrogen. So the process doesn't lend itself to nitrogen removal, which means that it's not only getting the water in the ground, but it's modifying the entire process of the plant, which is not easy to do because of the nature of the original plant was a trickling filter. You had those beds used to be actual filtration beds, and you would put the water on them and take it back out before it was discharged to the river. So they were part of the process. But in no part of this was ever a factor for treating for nitrogen.
But
And the process used there is hard to adapt to that. hence a much higher cost to do two different types of discharge.
Right, I would volunteer, at this point,
That's the
You know,
engineering
we're
answer.
gonna need to get into
Yeah,
this
there's some
level, and-
details,
and
yeah.
I
It is input.
jumped in with 2 feet.
and you can come in
Yeah.
and you can have, we can have a long conversation
Yeah.
to the point where your head will spin, but that's okay. If you're interested, but let me put it this way, you don't have to go there. If you're interested, I'll bring you, but for the decisions for this group, this is really not something that, you know, what I wanna do is kind of frame it so you do understand the implication, and it's a cost. So that's all it is.
Yeah.
And capacity, which has much bigger significance for the town of Concord for its ability to realize many things, including affordable housing, it's a constraint,
Okay.
all
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Okay.
That's the nature of the
I
the
know,
policy
I know we only have
implications.
you for-
So
Yeah.
I wanna
I
go
think
from,
that the summary here is, again.
just an example of
Piece-
the area that was,
The land that is in play is literally the ag fields. On the.
this
on
area here,
map, down there.
yeah.
Yeah, in this area, that could be on the plane. For a location for public works.
Could be public works.
Yeah.
There's no restriction on it, and again, the ag is a lease because it was available and we weren't at the time using it. So, I'm gonna go to, from the,
So just.
Yeah.
So assuming we find an opportunity for greenfield construction of public works. What is this suitable for? Since we've been told it's not suitable for public works, what could you use this current location for? Or
Well, this could-
Except for 141 being
Yeah,
historically.
yeah,
that-
141 is, has some historical, implications. But this site has some, cleanup needs to be done. There were some underground storage tanks. So that's going to be investigated. The use of it as a fuel depot and a, you know, a heavy equipment area. You know, we have hydraulic fluids and all kinds of chemicals and stuff. So we're gonna have to be investigated. And there will be a cleanup.
it was investigated,
Yeah.
it's just,
We have
when
had it
this, so,
done.
let me clarify,
Yeah.
so we don't go down rabbit holes. This had a, underground storage tank on the campus, and because of that, when the underground storage tank regulations started, getting more rigid, we identified, material that, you know, had been contaminated from petroleum product. Monitoring wells were installed, the site's been assessed, so it's not like hasn't been, but we know there is a use restriction based on that, much like there will be over at MCI. And so we have information on it, but what could it be is to be determined, but really it's the location that matters and, the area, which will drive, well, what's the best, you know, potential use? Knowing that this building may need to be incorporated into whatever that reconfiguration is. But the other buildings have no value other than they've been used historically for storage of equipment and, you know, personnel.
Right, I was getting, that there was work done here, but anyone's gonna have to come in and do due diligence over and above that to what they want, so depending on how much someone wants to invest into the site, this could be a residential area, this could be passive recreation, this could be mixed use, this could be a like industrial, it could be office. It's whatever the next person wants it to be.
And Concord Oil is right next to us, adjacent, right over here. This is their property. And so, you know, that this becomes a potential.
Yeah, they own the whole, both of
Yeah.
those pieces.
I'm gonna go to the MCI because we will spend time on the needs of, you know, public works. The real issue is the campus is somewhat dictated by the scope and the scale. There's a lot of heavy equipment. We have 60 personnel. We have a combination of public needs and interface, operational needs and protection and security, materials, storage. And so it's a unique kind of operation, which is not unique to Concord. This is part of what the consultant had done to identify, these are the services, this is the number of people. So they've kind of identified a need of about 14 acres of area that would be you know, I don't wanna call it ideal or not, I don't wanna frame it, it was their recommendation of what the need was, at least as of 5-10 years ago.
But to just replicate the purposes, the things that are done.
Exactly.
Currently.
Things that are done.
Exactly, and again, that was the outside consultant. When we look at this land use working group, you're also have to look at where we're gonna be in 20 years. That's important. And so that's those are some of the things that we need to sort of factor in. One advantage for this smaller subcommittee is there's gonna be a question of how much can we divide the operations? You know, is there a way, because 14 acres is hard to find, that's a constraint. One of the reasons why MCI is even a site is because when this report was done, that wasn't even a glimmer in anybody's eye. There was no contemplation of MCI, because it was the state, and that was what it was gonna be forever. Well, that's what's different. So I think the other thing is, do we take what is almost consolidated, and we're not, our facilities group we don't have room for them. They're in a different location right now, temporary. We really don't have room for all the staff we have. So when we look at where else could we go, do we want to start breaking it apart to make it work? Well, that has to be considered. There's a question people said, what if water sewer went somewhere and highway grounds went somewhere? Well, we need to answer that question. Part of it is, well, we day to day know what that could be, but you don't. So we need to be able to explain, why is there a need to be together or not, and go through the pros and cons. The MCI campus, because it's such a interesting new opportunity, and because of the schedule of DCAM and its interest to repurpose that area sooner rather than later for housing, as well as do something with their existing wastewater treatment plant, it sort of accelerates our need to understand that site. And so that's where we'll put a little bit of focus up front, where, you know, whether that's realized sooner or later, we just need to have some decisions so that we can at least stop the roadblocks from the what ifs that have been going and discussed over there. And a lot of the what ifs, just so, you know, kind of remind everybody, the state is willing to offer the wastewater treatment plant and permit, which is really what we call sort of the golden ticket to the town. And was specifically in the legislation or the budget carved out differently than the repurposing of the rest of the land. And we know they're interested in knowing the town's interest in assuming that responsibility and ownership. So we fast tracked some work with Weston and Sampson to say they were, believe it or not, hired before MCI was an option to help us begin what I was gonna say, a campaign to re-explain to the community that we have no wastewater capacity. It was gonna be a grand story. And most people don't care unless they need it. But fortunately with MCI, now everybody cares. So the good news is we have all eyes on us, which is what we wanted, because the community needs to understand the importance of this utility constraint. And we've also done some creative, you know, imagine what could MCI do to complement what they need for redevelopment on that campus, and what the town could use for redevelopment beyond that campus. So I want to kind of walk you through some of our early, you know, understanding, and knowing that DCAM is awaiting us, staff, and the town manager's office to provide them some input on what area do we believe is important to acquire if we were to accept the wastewater treatment plant. So that's our primary need. And because it overlaps with the advisory board's interests on what available land, you know, how could that be rezoned and repurposed, there is a direct connect of understanding this. Because would be a part of a public works operations, that brings it into this task force. So there's the connection of the three. So I wanted to just bring you to let's see, where do I have that? It's gonna come, should come up. It'll take a second. Let me, here. So, okay, stop share. Let me go back to share and see if I can find that plan. All right, okay, so. This, just to reorient you, is now the site where MCI is. I can't zoom out, but basically, just so you can see, Route 2 is up here. This is the Assabet River down here. That's Palm Ave.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, a copy of the plan.
It's a
Yeah.
little hard.
Okay, hard to see that, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is for Rob's benefit. He'll be able to see this.
We do have a little sensitivity to sharing the documents, so we may ask to collect them.
Yeah, these are just
Because they're working for purposes of what you see.
So what we want to do is sort of, we've used the advisory boards. They had three different, kind of visions for that campus as far as kind of density and location for different kind of land use. The yellow area is considered, residential. I think the green is more open space and the purple is more commercial industrial. So when you look at this, if you see those,
This is the third scenario.
the third scenario of three alternatives.
That's the base for this.
Correct, which was the highest density, I think, option that was being considered by the advisory board. So what we want to do, and there's a question of, well, what are the assets and land area associated with the wastewater treatment plant, so we can work around it. And we had, at this point, been really considering, and I think anybody's been out the campus, if you look at those black, kind of rectangles on that, in this area here, these are the actual infrastructure as well as an intake or a discharge pipe that is the brick and mortar of the facility itself. Around that, we need to know and understand that you need to get access to this facility. So if you come from Route 2 south, there's an access road, and we're gonna have to maintain that as well. So that's gonna be something that needs to be, can be relocated, yes. But presently, there's gonna need to be kind of vehicle egress in and out of that site. We have also considered an area around, you see that blue hashed mark around, there's actually a red circle, which represents a 300-foot buffer offset from the wastewater infrastructure. And that is based on TR16, which is an engineering design standard for wastewater operations and structures. And that is guidance. It's not a standard.
It's guidance.
It's just guidance.
Just guide.
But it basically identifies, if you were to build a new facility, you should provide a 300-foot envelope where you don't have residential development. So that's sort of a metric we look as, okay, that's a good place to start.
And that's just for
Residential.
surface water discharge, not,
No, this is simply a buffer for aesthetics and screening to a residential property from wastewater
From the
operations.
buildings and
Yeah.
tankage.
Indifferent as to what kind of discharge they're doing. It's just
Yeah.
Right,
the treatment plant
just
itself.
treatment,
needs
mostly for
space.
aesthetic purposes.
oh, just for aesthetic.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
right.
and it's not required.
It's not an
It's
operation
guidance, but it's
Yeah.
not
Oh.
required.
While it isn't required, it's published periodically by the New England Interstate Water Pollution Control Commission, which covers New England and New York.
Yeah.
And DEP and most of the other state
They
agencies
follow the
do
guidance.
refer to it. And frequently, when they make comments on permit applications, they'll cite TR16.
Yeah,
So
you have-
it's accepted industry guidance for the most part. It is specifically designed for new facilities. It is often not complied with And if we look at existing facilities, it's very
There
seldom.
were residential features within
Where-
300 feet of that and passed over the past 100 years or whatever.
Just
Plenty of-
exactly, and they exist.
Is the wall.
You can see the shadow line of it there underneath the
Is
yellow
this
here.
it?
See that that hard shadow line? That's the wall.
Well, why
thing.
couldn't we just keep the wall?
These are all questions.
Okay,
Yeah, we're not, we're just putting out the facts.
then you'd have
What
a
do we do
lot
in the
of
future?
yellow that you didn't have to use.
Yeah, so, so now, then we took that and we just put some area around that to define, you know, not through an oval, but just sort of meets and bounds that could be managed. An area around that, that infrastructure. And I'm gonna add to this, this dashed mark here, you see these boxes? These are the abandoned sand beds, much like we just talked about over at the, our municipal campus. And the reason we're looking at this is basically, we know to treat about 300,000, it's 310,000 gallons a day, that discharge, we have a cost of approximately $25 million. We are looking to try and figure out, and that cost has to be borne by somebody. And the present model in Concord, because not the entire community isn't served by wastewater, is for new customers, we collect money through a sewer improvement fee. It's intended to offset their impact of what it's gonna take to expand our operations to accommodate them. So the burden isn't on the existing customer, it's on the people coming in the door. That rate right now is grossly undervalued, although we hear lots of angst in the community that it's very expensive. But to Linda, your point, if it's an option, that's great. It's better than no option at no cost. And what we're trying to do with this particular opportunity is we have exhausted many other alternatives to try and expand capacity for the town of Concord to no success, with a lot of effort, including appealing permits, you know, all the way down to, you know, EPA in Washington. We have not been able to break that, you know, sort of constraint. This is an opportunity because this treatment facility could be completely allocated for redevelopment of this campus and that alone, privately. But we'd still be challenged with the town of Concord not having the ability to do anything beyond this campus. And that's been a major problem for the town. So we're looking at, can it be a facility that could serve the needs of redevelopment on that campus plus? And the plus is, can we expand the capacity, much like we use that model over at our existing wastewater treatment plant, to look at, could we possibly divert flow and go to groundwater discharge? And if that were the case, what area would that include? And so that's where this particular figure demonstrates a couple things. One is a buffer area to the existing operations of these, the treatment facility, to not have residential use. A potential expansion down into the Junction Village site to allow for us to take a range, and we're looking at anywhere from 150,000 gallons of additional wastewater capacity to up to 300,000, which would significantly reduce. So now if you look at a cost per gallon of treatment, we'd be taking something that might be on the order of $100 per gallon and bring it down to $70 per gallon for every new user or customer, whether it's for residents or commercial or whatever. And that would be to the benefit of the entire community. We have also done work back when we were trying to identify what the needs were of the community. And I think we have somewhere between 300 and 500,000 gallons of what we believe is the long-term need for the town's, you know, sort of growth based on trying to comport with the Envision 2030. That's the town's macro interest on what it wants to be when it grows up and gets fully developed. So we're really looking at this as a critical and timely opportunity that we don't want to miss, to say, here's the range of options for wastewater. And with the municipal land use task force, I think we have to understand the vision there is beyond this campus. So that's where, if we can get capacity, if we don't have capacity, even repurposing, moving us to different campuses, developing new area and trying to redevelop the old area, we don't have the capacity to do it. So that becomes a real bottleneck no matter what we do. So we're really looking at trying to be as creative as we can with this campus, because right now it's to be determined what's going to be there. Most other sites, it's established or fixed. And so that's where we're really trying to aggressively, how can we, make sure that people understand what flag we want to put in the sand to say, here's the opportunity and here are the potential costs and here are the potential benefits. And,
So just so I understand,
Yeah.
I apologize if you said there.
there was a lot there, so go ahead.
There's no one's talking about considering any other public works uses going on at MCI, other than just whatever's needed for wastewater treatment.
More discussion, yeah.
That's where we are now looking at it, because the highest and best use, while it might exclude residential, would not exclude potential public works.
And it
in that
was
area.
tipped in the overlay you see in the colors here, the scenario 3 that came out of the agency report. It was tipped a little bit if you read that report in detail, in addition to them showing this kind of dark bluish circle around the treatment plant.
Uh-huh.
It was tipped a little bit more, because I think they did mention potential other CPW municipal uses in the report.
Wasn't
Kind of-
captured in this phase.
It wasn't
but it was
specific, but
discussed.
it was kind of tipped a little bit in that
Mhm.
report that there's other options here for municipal
And,
use.
and in their report, Phil, the real challenge they have,
Who's their report?
the advisory board.
It's yours, so it's your
Yes.
group's for, okay.
The advisory board was given, here is the universe, try and identify the best development that's gonna have the least impact to the tax base. And you can't look beyond that. So there's no real serious consideration for municipal use, because that would not be a new tax revenue. And so it was kind of by design, not a variable that was gonna get much weight. So it didn't get, because they didn't have that option. A challenge was when the select board then convened the municipal land use working group, where they're now looking at the broader interests. And so they're looking at it as, well, public works needs X amount of acres, could that work over there? That became all of a sudden discovery of what's going on, wait a minute. But that wasn't part of the charge that the advisory board had. The advisory board was really looking.
So municipal use wasn't limited to, what's in the buildings, but also, amenities that the community might like, including recreation,
Mhm.
open space, playing fields,
Mhm.
museums, all sorts of things. So those are not
Income
generally
generating. Yeah.
income generating, and the focus was, and we had came up with 3 different scenarios. And logically, the one that had the most dense development, i.e. the least, it didn't have an ice rink, was the one that we are looking at now. There hasn't been a decision of exactly which scenario will go forward. So this is presuming that the revenue positive / revenue neutral would be what the community would choose, but the community hasn't
Hasn't said that.
said it, and hasn't even had the opportunity to really comment, because the report came out June 30th.
Correct.
And there hasn't been a lot of discussion over the summer. That really would begin next week.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's
to-
fine.
No, thank you. And that's why having Linda at the table is really helpful for us. And again, I just feel challenged that the advisory board was given a task, but then it was, and the work that they did is huge, because it sort of looked at all sorts of alternatives. kind of scope and scale. But now it's getting to the point where people need to start defining things a little more clearly, and we have DCAM literally asking, we need to know where you are both on the wastewater treatment plant, because that matters, it's time sensitive. And depending on that, that's gonna then lend itself to, well, what about the zoning? You know, and that's what they're eager to see, is the town gonna proceed with a zoning plan that's gonna be approved to realize. And Phil, this is for you, and Rob, I don't know if you're, you know, still.
Yeah, is Rob in? We were,
Let me see.
yeah, I don't know.
Listening, but
Rob,
I want to.
sorry you haven't been on our screen. Did you have some questions and?
No, I mean, some of it, so Alan, just to give you a little flavor of my background, I do heavy industrial construction. So my experience is wastewater, water treatment. I'm actually at the Cambridge water plant right now working, doing a skate
Nice.
upgrade. So, you know, and Linda did forward me the Weston Sampson report about a year ago-ish. I do have some concerns with their report, looking at it, just lifting it really quickly. And I know, you know, I just said I mentioned doing SCADA here. There's nothing mentioning any SCADA upgrades there, that's gonna be a
Oh, yeah.
cost.
Yeah.
And then number two, the other thing is, given the location where this is, there isn't any mention of odor control and, you know, what that's gonna be like so. And I know, looking at the number, you got a $25 million number there, but those items are not included there right off the bat, and those are not cheap, you know, to start.
Yeah.
And then, and I'll dive into it a little bit more into the report. And I do have other questions with the existing facilities, and we can, you know, dive into those separately on the side. The other question I did have, do we have any historical data on the maximum discharge the plant has had ever? You know, have they ever hit the 310,000 gallons per day? You know, I know it's
I'm not-
listed, I know it's listed to operate at that, but can it really
Correct.
operate at that? That's, you know, that's another concern.
Rob, I had seen really old numbers where they were up in the 200s. It depends a lot on a number of things, as you're probably aware. One of the big things is how tight the system is and if they get rainwater. So if they're in a peak rainfall infiltration inflow event, I think they have tipped up towards that 300. But to my knowledge, they've never consistently treated that anywhere near that for sanitary waste.
And Rob,
So-
I'm gonna volunteer. So I've been around long enough to actually go through a complete rehab and rebuild of our existing 1.2 million. So, and I completely hear you, but at this level, I can tell you the 25 million and what the existing needs are somewhat compatible with what DCAM had its own engineer do as well. But I'd love it if you had time and interest to talk shop, to come in. That's the value. That's great. I thought I'd heard you'd had some expertise. And so we can kind of flush that out. Our interest is that we do cover and capture the real costs ultimately. But at this point, you know, those ideas and concepts, I'd say are, you know, well, agreed, important. I'm not sure we've got to that level yet. That's all.
Yeah, my concern is that, you know, we go from 20, I've seen these go from 25 million, you know, or they go to 40 million without, you know, skipping a beat because
I know.
So that's my big concern. I mean,
I've seen it.
Yeah, so you
But
know,
Rob, what I'd also love to talk to you about is, it goes to Linda's point. Would you like to have a value that at least you can get capacity, or not even have that option? And that's what we've been wrestling with for 25 years in Concord. So I'd love to give you a little bit, if you had the time and at your convenience, some of that background. But regardless of what the cost is, we are looking for a need, independent of redevelopment, of 300 to 500,000 gallons a day for Concord to realize its vision of economic growth, development, and housing, that we haven't been able to identify anything that's cost beneficial for 20 years. That's why, regardless of the cost, this is at least a real alternative. And what I want to talk about is this ability to try and expand that right now, given there's an interest for DCAM to see housing across the state. So we wanna, help them and us, the town, realize it. The town, who's been thwarted with economic growth development for commercial in the downtown areas because of capacity. So this is a real golden opportunity that we just gotta refine to understand, well, what are the impacts for costs? But, I would love to, pick your brain or have you get up to speed, in the details, whenever you're ready. But
Yep.
I can completely appreciate from the macro, yeah, there's some gaps, but I think we can help close those, and you can
No,
probably help us
absolutely.
refine them.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
And I think the rest of the committee would be, certainly, want to get into those weeds.
That's up to you. I mean, welcome to the table, but
So,
it's,
yeah,
it's deep, so.
okay,
But I
Right.
think that for the purposes, it is also just, it's a critically important piece for economic development for the town. It's not the charge that we have necessarily to just resolve that issue. We have to look at the public works
Correct.
campus, things that are going on.
Correct.
So we can go down this sinkhole, and I'll spend a lot of time there because it's critically important, but at some stage, there's a variable that we have to come to that says the potential cost for reusing this as a wastewater treatment plant is going to be about 25 million or 40 million, and would take this much of the land in the MCI process, in the MCI parcel. That's the variable that you've got to weigh against all these other things.
Exactly.
And, we can go down into detail to come up with that. Yeah, somebody's gonna have to do
Yeah,
that.
and the cost per gallon is really the roll-up. Because ultimately, we will then have a basis of knowing what is the buy-in fee. So you can develop or,
Yeah.
realize, and the higher that is, the more painful it is for redevelopment on this campus and beyond. So that's really why it's such a kind of a critical path. And the good news is, and I'm just gonna say this at the risk of, you're new to Concord. Keith knows Concord, Linda, the Concord way of evaluating every alternative. DCAM doesn't want us to do it the Concord, they need us to be more proactive and figure out something soon, and they kind of said that. So they're standing by waiting for us to be taking some action, and what we're describing is a legitimate. We can give them concrete, here it is, this is what we're trying to work with. And ultimately, I think the select board is gonna be a key player.
If I could though, the land use working group, and I'm a member of
Yeah.
of that task force. Has, a charge which includes commercial development, housing and open space. Sadly, from my perspective, those things are in a phase 2 that we're supposedly only allowed to get to after we've solved the phase 1 problems. Of housing, DPW, public safety and town administration, but as this shows. That we have to consider what comes next. Now, that we're talking about expanding wastewater capacity. In the only location, from what I've heard Alan say, the only location in Concord where we can, at any reasonable cost, expand our wastewater capacity, and that ripples across the whole town, economic development. And all other things which nominally are part of the land use working group's charge. And I've been pushing for us to get to that point sooner rather than later, and I think this option of expanding wastewater at MCI brings those issues to the fore. We've got to be thinking about what do you do with the additional capacity beyond MCI. And if this is the only location where we can ever ask that question,
And it really is,
talk about it
it's
right
because of
now.
that NIPD's permit, that surface water discharge is, you don't make them anymore. So we have one for Concord, and there's one for MCI, and there is one up at Middlesex School, but it's very small. But that's it.
So let me ask a question about
Yeah.
that. We had in a separate.
Yeah.
In a conversation that we had, there was some talk about. Shifting permits between the two plants and moving wastewater from one, the
Yeah.
capacity from one and using discharge. A complicated permitting scenario to do that.
Yes.
If that is a scenario that may impact our decision, what, that will define what these potential costs are. have you started that conversation about whether that's even possible? Because with the DEP,
We're there after, we're literally, it's been a lot going on all summer.
Yeah.
But we really need to make sure there's no surprises anywhere, but right now internally, we're about to start those conversations and really, working with DCAM to be potentially
at the table.
at the
same
table.
time. Yeah. 'cause
Yeah,
they
so,
can
so we're
facilitate.
trying to build the coalition of interest and understanding and then go talk to DEP. So we're almost there. Okay? And it is, we're looking at what ifs on all different fronts, and this is where the challenge is, you're literally gonna come into our territory, and I welcome it, but the good news is, I'm very pleased, people like Rob, that's music to my ears as far as where you're coming from. Having Phil as a resource in town, understanding the broader regulatory perspectives and, challenges is huge. Paul Bohm has experience with EPA and, so we have people who are part of our team, which, if not now, I don't know what we do. And I will tell you this, and this is, Linda, you'll appreciate it from the planning. And Kent was here. In 2003, we finished a comprehensive wastewater master plan. Over 70 public meetings involved NRC, Planning Board, Public Works Commission, Select Board, Board of Health, neighborhood meetings. There was a plan. Because of the capacity that we identified, the plan included a growth neutral principle that everybody understood. This isn't to expand, this is to serve environmental needs and failed septic systems. 2 to 3 years later, planning comes with a planned production plan that ignored the foundational issue. We don't have capacity to expand, and we started tripping over ourselves because we went through this planning process. It couldn't be more public, and it got conveniently ignored, and we've been dealing with that ever since. And this is the first time we can possibly, with wastewater, get ahead of that. And I will also premise, we are also looking at, and I love this stuff because it takes real creative thinking. We also understand, well, what about drinking water? Well, we also have a plan in place to start looking at that as well, but we don't have the same constraint today, but in 10, 20 years, we may. So we're already mapping out a strategy for that. But this is exciting to me, but it's complex. And we got to figure out with your support, how to package it, how to communicate it. And this group, the more interested you are, I'm happy. But we also got to figure out how does the community understand this stuff too.
It's also a scaled version of the challenge that's affecting the entire Commonwealth, which is there's a push for housing. But that push for housing comes on a level that doesn't pay attention to the fact that there's no infrastructure to support it in those places. So there's all this, hey, we want this housing, there's tons of systems set up. Very little attention to, you need wastewater and water capacity to do that. In most communities where there's space to do housing, there's no water or wastewater infrastructure to support it. So there's a blind spot that the state has had that we're continuing at the state level to have conversations about. It's the same all over the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, not just Concord. It's exactly what's happening everywhere.
So let's just get back to Rob and make sure if
yeah.
he has other comments, because we're coming up on the end of our time and we need to discuss next steps.
So just, a couple things for us to look at is, we talked about that land, that's near the water treatment plant that's currently used for agriculture. Talked about the lease, but no one mentioned how long the lease is for. So we need to take a look at that, and if the lease is a long lease, is there a buyout option as well, for our consideration to use that land? Just to have it on available. The other thing is, Alan, might be a bit more technical. The sand beds at the existing wastewater plant, are they buildable or are they in really poor shape, like to grade the site?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
The sand beds.
The sand beds, are
plant.
they at the existing plant? You think, in your opinion, are they still gradable where we could, if we
Oh, yeah,
had to-
so, Yeah, Rob, we did a kind of a phase one hydrogeologic loading assessment with DEP involved. And so we have captured about 155,000 gallons a day that we believe we could permit. As Kent mentioned, the challenge over there is it's with denitrification. And that significantly is going to sort of contribute to the cost. But when we go through this analysis of the wastewater, these are the two areas that we'll sort of drill into, and it really is going to be a cost per gallon, cost benefit. And Rob, with your interest in understanding, I'd love to talk to you about some of the permitting, considerations we're thinking about. But none of these are, it's not a straight map. It's not obvious, but we think we have a lot of a case to be made where we can get creative with groundwater discharge and surface water discharge where it makes the most sense environmentally. But we got to back that into what are the regulations and policies. But I'd love to, share that with you if you had time.
So I'll find some time. We'll
Okay,
set some
great.
up.
Excellent. Okay.
Anything?
No, I mean, it seems to me like it's like drinking from a fire hose a little bit.
It is.
To think about all those things at once. I think I need to think about this for a little while.
Yeah.
Our next, we should schedule a time to meet
Yep.
again. And sort of between now and then, perhaps come back with a list of like the questions and things we want to look at in advance of that meeting so that we can
Mhm.
come up with an agenda. I'm also particularly interested in just understanding, independent of the wastewater question, some of this, like what other facilities Public Works has
Yeah,
and capacities that are out there, cause I know there's the compost facility, there's stuff over on.
Thank you,
on the
Phil. We
main
didn't go
corner
there.
and all-
We focused here because of the time sensitivity, but correct. I think part of the task force is to look at what other areas are
You have to
there.
have the
Yeah,
whole, the whole baseline of
Exactly.
Public Works, so you know what pieces you can move around within your existing universe now.
exactly.
As well as thinking about other places that you might wanna go.
Correct.
That would be a useful thing to understand at
Yeah.
the next.
Okay, so could you address that? in
Yeah,
the
we'll,
next
we'll
meeting?
try to
Next time.
identify those areas that we've identified that are not, well, we have to take by eminent domain, this area, for instance,
Yeah, but
Yeah.
just sort of have an understanding of that, the whole that, because it doesn't make sense to me to look at this subset of Public Works without at least acknowledging a
Correct.
bunch of other things that we need
including the
to.
reuse of this campus.
Yeah, some of it may stay here and some
Right.
we need to move part of it, whatever. So that would be the next sort of piece to understand.
And I guess when you say eminent domain, but you could look at, if you need 14 acres, you could find 10. Is there, 3 acres that the town could consider as a purchase or, or something like, you could say, okay, what in the neighborhood might be available, just to make
Yeah.
the sort of numbers.
Yeah.
So I think that, Judith had come up with this sort of tasks for phase one. And so I would, say if,
Apologies, I'm having a chance.
no, but I think that would be a good thing to look at and begin to organize ourselves
Mhm.
with. And then come up with maybe some task lists and work plans. So I think those would be sort of our next kind of ways to keep ourselves on the road.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna ask if Shannon can send us a few options for times that we could get together where you're available and or we can find a meeting space.
Yeah,
And I guess we should meet what are you thinking about, 2 weeks? Or what is the
I think
meeting
that's,
schedule
I
that
think that's
people
up
are?
to you all, but I think the full working group for now is looking to do every 3 weeks. I can say it would be, I don't know if you all have a preference on location, but I don't think I'm realistically gonna be able to attend all of these.
Okay, so then someone
meetings.
will have to know how to figure out.
If you meet
Big
at the
techno-
townhouse, I can say I think it's a lot easier to make sure there's someone there to set everything up for
Okay,
you.
and the townhouse is available now?
Well, even if,
Starting cooler.
even if the AC isn't fixed, we're about to be in the clear for not needing ACs.
Okay.
So I think, we can start meeting
Simple-
there
The
again.
simplest thing for staff is to just have is for you to schedule a
Recurring
virtual
regular.
meeting.
Yeah,
On
a Zoom meeting,
Okay.
you
Right.
know, you don't need someone to set things up for you, but at the
Okay.
townhouse, there's always going to be someone in the town manager's office that can set your
Okay.
technology up.
And technically, I know Megan Zamoto and Shannon are sort of the staff
For the-
support. For Public Works, sort of, as I said, we can kind of step in and help facilitate to some degree as well. I gotta be careful how much resources we have, and this is one thing, just, it was discussed with a larger group. The advisory board had significant funds and resources for third party. The challenge with this one is, this working group, working group doesn't really have anything other than staff, and this has really been sort of just we kind of plug and play with you, but
Right.
I think it's a partnership to some degree,
Yeah,
so,
be scrappy.
yeah, we'll make it work. Like I say, what I'm excited is we have, the team that we have for Public Works seems to be, even your interest, Linda, of the three, your willingness to kind of deep dive in some of this is great. It's just, I don't expect that. It's not required when we
Okay,
talk, is what I'm saying.
well, we'll try and have a measured approach.
Yeah,
Mr. Burnett, it's hard to understand some of the questions without a little bit of a deep dive,
Yeah.
it's the challenge.
So I'm thinking maybe 2 weeks because we're a little behind the other groups.
Okay,
And then at our next meeting, we can decide a little bit more formally how.
so that would bring us to the week of, September 8th through the 12th.
Does that sound good, Rob, to you? I mean, if Shannon comes up with a couple of times, does it matter to anybody? Evening, morning, afternoon?
Typically
I'm much
prefer
better
evening,
during the
but-
day.
I'm sorry,
the flip
Rob?
si- I'm the flip side because I'm on site, so, but I can, if it's around this time, I can maybe pencil it in and see. We'll come up with the times and we'll figure something
Send
out.
a few options.
Yeah, send a few options. Maybe, sounds like this time of day is good for people. It's
Okay,
flexible.
all right, sounds good.
Okay, all right, and then can we adjourn the meeting? Okay,
Yeah.
thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody.